on Claude Picasso, and I heard his name. I thought, oh dear, here was Claude. He's number 5. So I fell in love with Claude on the dance floor. But I was married and he was married. So he gets divorced, and I get divorced, and I run into him a few months later, and he said, would you like to have dinner? And I said, sure. So he came to my home and never left. And we were together for really 10 years, but it was 3 years in the beginning, or 4. And now, I had the feeling his mother had a lot of money. She lived in Paris. She was bourgeois. You know the word bourgeois? She was a bit of a snob, okay? And he would go there, but he didn't invite me. So when he left, I thought, I'm not a hotel. I'm not running a hotel. So I started dating. And I went out with a man called Mike Nichols. Does anyone remember him? He married Diane Sawyer. Did you remember? He was a great director. What movies? Do you remember the movies? The Graduate. Remember The Graduate?
Yeah.
So anyway, he said, what are you, would you like to go to Jacqueline Onassis' anniversary with me at El Morocco? I thought, sure. So I ended up going with Mike. Here is Jackie, and here's Mike and me, and we went to El Morocco. As Mike's limousine pulls up, who should return from Paris but Claude, the same night? Well, I thought, you know, he could have told me he was coming, he didn't. So I said, I'm going to my dinner, and you can go in the bedroom. So he did, and we got over the squabble, but then I never saw Mike again. And a year after that, that was 72, 73, the phone rings, and Claude and I are in bed, and it's New York Times, who tells him his father died. And he says, Mayor, Mayor, Mayor. Does anybody know what that is? Shit, shit, shit. In bed, they said his father died, Pablo Picasso.
Oh, it's a shame.
Yeah, so we go off to Marseille to look for his body. Well, now, nobody knew where the body was because Francoise, his mother, didn't talk to the woman who married Picasso. So we had to go and find the body, and we walked around the graveyard. It was a castle called the Chateau de Vauvenargues, and it was outside of Aix-en-Provence. So we were looking for the body, and I said, well, just run dirt through your fingers. There were all these graves around with mounds of dirt, and it was a moat that had been turned into a graveyard. So I said, just feel that moist dirt will be where his body's buried. It was logical. There they are, Maya, Claude, Paloma, Maya's husband, all feeling this dirt, which was so silly. So finally someone went into Aix-en-Provence and signed, Paloma wrote, to our father whom we have loved and will always love forever. She said, now what do I do with this? It was on a crayon on, you know, you get the cardboard from a dry cleaner. I said, put it by a grave. She said, which one? I said, it doesn't matter, anyone. So they put it by a grave. And then Claude said, we said the Lord's Prayer, and Claude asked me to be his wife. So that was in 73. Then Francoise bought me a wedding dress. So in 74, she sued the French government, and she won because the French government had a rule called the Napoleonic Code, which said illegitimate children could not inherit the estate if there were no will. And Picasso wouldn't leave a will because he thought it would bring on his death. So she won her lawsuit against the government, and Claude became a millionaire, and that was in 74. Now we had 2 apartments. We had one in New York and one in Paris, and I went back to the New York to clean it up. And my agency called and said, a director wants to see you for a movie. It's called Stepford Wives. I said, well, I'll meet with him. And sure enough, he cast me on the audition without having me read. And this is the picture over here. I'm the second one in from the left. And we filmed it. And does anyone know what a Stepford wife is? Do you remember the movie? It's what you do. Can you tell me what it's like?
I can't say anything now.
They were robots, right?
I don't think so.
Well, the husbands murdered their wives.
Yes.
Gee. so they could be clean their ovens and do their baking and their shopping and be their servants. The husbands didn't want the wives to have identities except for what they wanted them to do.
They were like puppets.
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 Like puppets, right? Yeah. So that's what a Stepford wife was, and essentially that's what I was to Claude, because we were living off of my money. But oh, look, he wants to be with you. Oh my, look at this love affair. What is your name?
Dorothy.
Dorothy and Herbert. Oh. So anyway, we were living off of my money, and if I wanted to buy something, I had to get Claude's approval to pay for it. That's what a Stepford wife was. That's what I was essentially. So, very unliberated. This is the height of woman's lib, and this is what I was doing. So finally, I go back to Paris, and I call home, and I call my mother, and she says, your father's in the hospital. He tried to commit suicide. I said, Claude, I have to go home. And I said, when are we getting married? My wedding dress was a year old. So he said, he wouldn't answer me. He put his fist in the floor, in the wall, kicked our dog. I said, well, I'm leaving you, and I'll be in New York when you make up your mind. So I said, but you owe me the $3,000 that we were living off of. I need my money back. And he stopped at a bank, he withdrew it, and he threw it in my face, and he said, here, shove it up between your legs, your private parts.
That's a shame.
Yeah, isn't that awful?
Yes.
So I went back to New York. Now I'm in there crying in bed, and the agent calls and said, we have another director who wants you for a movie, so you have to come to Hollywood to test. I said, all right. So I went to Hollywood, and my agent said, well, if you want to be an actress, you have to be in Hollywood. You have to move. So now I had 3 apartments. I got an apartment there. I had one in New York and one in Paris. So, how did this happen now? I was rather well known because of the film I tested for, and I'd go by the pool of the Beverly Hills, and I was paged once, and it was a man called Jack Nicholson, whom I had met. You remember Jack?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was really handsome. And I had met him the night of Jacqueline Onassis's anniversary with Mike Nichols. But so he called me and he said, well, I'd like to come over for tea. And I said, well, I'd love to see you, but how about dinner? He said, oh, I can't be seen with you. He was living with Angelica Houston. I said, well, no dinner, no tea. And I hung up on him. And that's how the men were in Hollywood to women.